Hello, it's your friend Doublebite, and I've decided to temporarily take a break from my staring into space doing nothing tonight and procrastinating sleep to procrastinate sleep by actually talking about the code thing that I said I would talk about. Woo! So, for those of you who didn't see my preview tweet, I made a little thing. I forget what state it's in right now, so let's just run it and see what it looks like. Also, you're probably getting like a little fractal thing with OBS in the corner. My bad. I didn't minimize that. Just thought of that. I'm used to doing window capture. I'm doing display capture for this since it's going to be a couple different windows, and I don't want to fuck with it because it's 12:45 a.m. Okay, so we have a field here. Oh, look, lots of little flowers. Isn't that nice? Now they're growing. All sorts of good stuff. What's this? They're exploding. Why are these flowers exploding? They're reproducing. We have a big old flower orgy here. They are spreading out their pollen where it's going to hit other plants and affect their DNA because realism. Now let's watch this for a couple generations and see what happens. Let's see if any patterns start to come up. So the idea behind this is that the flowers grow in 3 stages. When a flower is first planted, it's one of 4 different types, and it passes certain traits on in its pollen. Then pollen hits a plant, it gives a little bit of that trait to the plant's genome, or rather it gives a chance of those traits appearing in the plant's children. I want to say that specifically because it isn't a true genome. It doesn't. There are no throwbacks. Right? It's a one-way thing only. So color. Right now, the attributes that we pass on are color in terms of red, blue, and red, green, and blue components, and type. There's a chance it will pass on the type of whatever one it was previously. And these parameters are such that they can be tweaked. I have some tweaks in there already. I'm hoping to add more. I want to add a tool that lets you plant flowers of specific type and coloration. I think that'd be cool. As you see here, we're at like 3 or 4 generations. I should have been paying attention. I forgot, or I zoned out. But already we can see color patterns. And it's not just a matter of, oh, well, they reproduced and they made more just like themselves, but we can see a lot of variation in there as well. We've got a couple of patches of dark flowers. Up in the kind of center left, we have this green area. Looks like the bottom right is overwhelmingly purples. The bottom right corner actually looks like generally kind of a pastel kind of theme. No real super significant trends in terms of flower type. I think we're seeing a decent variety of all of them. But yeah, so I haven't worked on this much since I spent 2 afternoons working on it, which is how, basically every project I ever do works. Sustained focus is not my strong suit as an individual, says the person with, over 525 YouTube videos or something crazy like that. But yeah. So I've got it set up so I can reset it at any time. And let's go through the code a little bit. Again, I want to add it so that you can plant individual flowers, and I want to make it easier to tweak parameters. But yeah. I will post a link in the description to this video to the artist who made the sprites. Oh, I can't remember their name off the top of my head. Shit. I don't necessarily want to dig around looking for. I will put it in the description. I promise. The first thing I do after this video, it's Luna something. Oh fuck, I can't remember. Anyway, I don't know. Yeah, you know what? Let me see if I can find it from here, actually. Flower set, load sprite. Okay, this doesn't have any of my information. Lovely blue. I knew it began with an L. I was way off. Okay. Yeah, lovely blue. And it did not have any of my real name in it. Nice. So this is the tile set by Lovely Blue that I found. It's free to use with credit. And I picked this one because it looked nice, but I also saw variations of color. So that was the first thing. My original plan, and something I might go towards later, is a game. I wanted kind of like a exploration tower defense-ish game. You have this big field, and you can go from area to area collecting seeds and then planting them. But if you leave any one area too long, it will get overgrown with weeds, or animals will eat your seeds. So you can choose to go gathering and risk your gardens falling into disrepair, or you can stay and guard your gardens, but be very limited in what you can do. I still might want to try that, but I got a little distracted. So, I picked this one because of the variety and the variety of colors. I ended up doing something different with the color, but I kept with the variety. You can see here there's the little ones that I use as the little templates. Then I picked some of these as mediums, right? And then I have the big versions to make them, so each, there's 4 types of 3 stages. So we'll get to that. Now, I'm not sure if you can tell, it's not very clear. I'm just going to rerun this again real quick. It's not super apparent here, but you can kind of see here-ish and here-ish that there's slight variations in the color of the grass. That's because our grass sprite was actually meant to simulate moisture and dryness. So, moisture and temperature. So, this becomes a scale of moisture, and then the color gradient from brown to green represents temperature. Right now it's not actually a factor, but that's why this is gray. And yeah. So a lot of these are tests right now. But the important ones are flower tops and bottoms for each. The flower tops, they're kind of hard to see because they're in grayscale, but they represent just the tops of the flowers. And then, obviously, the flower bottoms represent the bottoms of the flowers. Yes, I did manually edit out the flowers from each of these. Why, yes, it would have, that's funny. It would have been way smarter to just edit out the bottoms and then have the tops overlaid on the bottom, right? So have the full, not do a bottom sprite, and just have the top sprite overlay rather than cutting it out. But I didn't do that. If that didn't make sense, don't worry about it. For each stage, there's a top and a bottom sprite, and they're in grayscale, and the 4 types are represented by 4 sub-images, and they correlate. So if a flower, when it's created, will have type 0, then it's going to be the first sprite from bottoms 1, and when it grows, it'll be the first sprite in bottoms 2, tops 2, bottoms 2. So that's more or less straightforward. Again, I might be a little incoherent on account of it's 12:51 a.m. That's how I roll. As far as the room goes, it's a pretty simple room. Just have a little room controller object. Is there anything in... Oh yeah, there's a call to randomize to make sure it runs differently every time I run it. And this global grow factor is not relevant. So yeah, the only thing in my room in Gamemaker is this room controller. So what does the room controller do? Let's look at that briefly. Room controller, when you create it, it plants the grass, it plants the flowers, Q ends the game, R restarts the room. When you plant the grass, all this is doing is saying, hey, iterate based on the width of the room versus the width of our tiles, and then place grass tiles. The plant flowers is a little more complicated. it goes again across the room. I can change the spacing. So the bigger the spacing, the more space between flowers, the fewer flowers total. And right now it is randomized. So for each spot, every 8 pixels, there is 4% chance that it'll plant a flower or plant the seeds for a flower. If I want to make a nice grid, let's say we're going to space them 64, which is the width of our grass tiles. So this is going to make it approximately 1 per tile. And we're going to set our chance to 0. Now let's see what happens. I like doing this too because it has interesting effects throughout the generations. And there we go. We have a nice orderly grid. As you can see, there is still some randomization as far as when they grow. And this grid is only for initial seeding. As you'll see when we go a generation, because, I let this go for a little bit. There is no concept of the grid once they grow. Because, what's the fun in that? So putting it on the grid definitely makes it easier to test and see patterns. It's kind of neat, and I appreciate. And again, you still get the nice, juicy, random goodness right after the first generation. I also want to figure out a way to incorporate stats metrics into this. So that's going to be tricky because we have just so many objects on screen. And the data structure for each flower is a little complicated. I'm actually pretty proud that I haven't crashed Gamemaker yet, just given how many objects I have on screen, and the way Gamemaker handles objects on screen is sometimes not the most efficient. Anyway, let's just make sure we didn't skip anything here. And let's change this back to our previous settings, because I tend to find they give good results, or at least testing purposes. So I am generally using the naming convention, Sprites Engine S, Objects Engine O. The reason for this is whenever you name something, it becomes a global variable in Gamemaker. So I can't say this is flower, and then use flower as a variable name. Gamemaker would get very cranky with me. This is one of the weirdest things about Gamemaker, although there are other way weirder things. Let's look at the leaves briefly. Oh no, leaves are no longer used, flowers 1 is no longer used, grow flower is where we're at. So, we create a new flower. We're going to set an alarm, alarm 0, and it's based on this complicated looking timer, which is really just saying, based on this, it's going to wait at least 50 steps, plus some randomization. The reason why I have this repeated so many times is to give it a significant variance between the top and the bottom. So let's say I think growth factor is 50, and let's say this is repeated 5 times, so it could be as little as 5, it could be as high as 250. There's probably a smarter way of doing this, but that's just how I did it. So it sets the initial timer, and we're going to set some properties. So flower ID is interesting. This is essentially the flower's last name, if you would. Oops, typed a thing. It's random, which is kind of a stupid way of doing it, but whatever. I'd like to replace this with an actual genome at some point, but again, we'll see if I actually ever work on this again. But for now, when the very first flower is created, it gets its flower ID. Every one of this flower's children will always have this flower ID. And this prevents a flower from pollinating itself. So the pollen will not get absorbed by this flower or any of this flower's children. They won't pollinate each other. Unrealistic, I know. Work with me here. Can only pollinate flowers of completely different ancestry. Temperature and moisture. These are the same parameters as with the grass. It's mostly irrelevant. So moisture is what level of light to dark the leaves are going to be. Temperature is where they are on the brown to green spectrum. Not super relevant, you can barely see them. Here's the good stuff. Type, it's going to be one of the 4 types. Image speed, image index, even though our sprite has 4 subsprites, the image speed were 1, we'd see the sprite go through all of them. It would look animated. This means it's not going to be animated, it's just going to stay on that one sprite. And then we're setting some nice random red, blue, green values. We're saying stage is equal to 0. That means that the flower has not started growing yet. This is just for flipping it horizontally, just for some variation. And genetic strength is going to be used for indicating that how likely this flower is to retain its own genes. Again, it's kind of a wonky concept, but we'll see. And right now, the sprite, if you see here, we make the leaf color based on the temperature. We make the flower color based on its red, green, blue values. But if stage is 0, we only draw some generic leaves. And if stage is 1, we draw the bottom and the top, the proper colors. Stage is 2, bottom 2, top 2. If stage is 3, bottom 3, top 3. So again, this type is the index of the sprite. So if it is type 1, it will be the second frame of the sprite, because computers, programmers start counting at 0. And then that will stay the same through all of the stages. So, created, set some basic properties, set for alarm 0. What happens when we do this? A couple of things happen. First of all, we set it to stage 1. That will cause it to display the sprite for the first stage of growth. Set a new timer for the next alarm. I have here a little bit of fun. Whenever a plant grows to a new stage, it has a chance of destroying its neighbors. This is to kind of population control a little bit and to prevent too much clustering. Think of it as not having enough natural resources. So here, this is when it is stage 1, and if its neighbor is stage 0, aka if it's just a seedling, it has a chance to kill it. And then it can do that for up to 4 neighbors. And alarm 0 is when we establish our genetics. The reason I did this is because there are some weird edge cases that I wanted to avoid. So it is what it is. Ooh, shit. There's some bad shit that I did not do here. Okay. Note to self. I actually have a huge memory leak in this program. I'm surprised it hasn't bit me in the ass yet. I might not go into that. It's a little technical. I'm actually going to fix it right now. Because I want to fix it and then explain what I did. I hope this doesn't break anything. Doo-da, doo-da. I'm sorry if you just heard me typing loudly. Doo-da-doo-da-day. Okay. Pretend I didn't do that. So, alarm 1 goes off. We destroy the neighbors. Okay, alarm 0 goes off. We establish the genetics. Right. Back here. So in Gamemaker, there are no proper arrays. Normally in programming, you could say type gene is a list, and then you can add things to the list, take things away from the list, use the list in other places. Gamemaker, you basically sort of make a list, but then you need to constantly refer to the list in a weird way. So, not a programmer, don't worry about it too much, but usually I would just be able to say type gene, add type. But here I need to say get the list with this name and then add it. There's an extra step involved. It's a little unique to Gamemaker. Anyway, so what this is doing is, based on our genetic strength, we are going to create 4 lists. So our genetic strength was 10, so each of these lists is going to have 10 elements. This is going to have 10 elements that are the type, so 0 through 3, for the 4 types of flowers. And then for the red, blue, and green, it's going to say we're going to take this flower's color and randomize it slightly. And there's going to be 10 of each. So what this is saying is that right now, if this flower makes a subflower, it's going to pick one of these things from its genes. So it has a 10 out of 10 chance of being the same type as its parent. Ignoring the random factor, it has a 10 out of 10 chance of being the same shade of red, 10 out of 10 of being blue, 10 out of 10 of being green. So 100% chance of being identical to its parent, given these genes. Alarm 1. We destroy the neighbors again, if they're weaker than us. And set to stage 2, we set the next alarm. Alarm 2. No more destroying neighbors. Same basic idea. 3 and 4, we create pollen. So here's how that works. And we set the timer. So here's how that works. Right now, we have I made variables for our traits. And we're going to spray off pollen in a rough circle. We have this counter. It's going to go 360 degrees, so a circle. I'm going to start at some place between 0 and 15 degrees, and then randomly increment. So again, spraying in a circle. So this is a Gamemaker construct called with. So we're saying we're going to make a new pollen object, an instance of pollen. Then with pollen means we're going to pretend for the rest of this code that this is inside the pollen. Okay? So the pollen's direction is going to be equal to our counter. So it's going to be somewhere between 0 and 360 degrees. We're going to give it a speed. And we're going to say this pollen's red, green, blue, and type are equal to the parent's red, green, blue, and type. We're going to say it's the pollen's parent flower is our current flower, and that's that flower ID that I was telling you about. The pollen has its own alarm, and the pollen has a lifespan, how long it will exist before it poofs. So we're going to make a bunch of pollen. We're going to do that in kind of 2 waves. Wave 1, poof, 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 poof. Wave 2, poof, 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 poof. Then the last step is next generation. We're going to make a bunch of flowers between 1 and 6. The caveat that the more flowers are on the screen, the fewer flowers each one of them will make. Again, just to prevent things from getting out of control. And what this is doing is saying we're going to shuffle our genes and then pick the first one. So remember how I said there's 10 members, all with this. When we start this out, we have 10 members for each gene, and they're all the same. So this is 10 of the same type, 10 of the same red value, 10 of the same green value, 10 of the same blue value. Which means that if we shuffle them, it wouldn't do anything. And we're just going to grab the first member of those lists. Now what we have here is saying we're going to get the first value of red from our gene, add it to the flower's value of red, and then average it. So if our gene is untouched, all the red values are 50, my red value is 50, they get added to 100, divided by 2, back to 50. No difference. This is a little hack I did. Basically, if a flower is bright, it may get brighter. If a flower is dull, it may get duller. And now we're going to create new flowers. We're going to give them our generated types. We're going to give them this generated information that we got from our genes. That was here. Give it the same flower ID as its parent. And all of this basic stuff that we saw when we created the original flower. Because only the very first flower gets all of that stuff randomly set, and then every new flower gets some stuff from its parents. And then what this does is it cleans up the code. It makes sure that these lists that we created get deallocated. We no longer need them, so they get destroyed. And I had that in this step when the flower dies at the end of its life. However, as you can see here, there are other steps that might destroy flowers. So we need to just make sure we free up the list memory of those. So that change will either break this or make it work. I'm just going to run it and see what happens before we try anything else. Catch it now before I do something embarrassing. Yep. I'm going to need to... Okay, I'll add that later. Whoopsie. I had a hunch that was going to break things. The problem is the genes don't exist until stage 1 alarm goes off, which is good for some things, but it's kind of a lazy hack. Anyway, so we've seen how the flower sets itself up, sets up its genes, grows, creates pollen, and then dies and creates new flowers. How does the pollen work? Got some weird stuff here. Basically, this is just setting up a cycle to slow itself down over time, as if it gets shot out and then slowly gets air resistance, and eventually randomly poof out of existence. Goes outside the room, poofs out of existence. We draw it in the same way that we drew our flowers. Takes its red, green, and blue values and makes a color out of them. But what happens when it collides with a flower? We check to make sure... We check to make sure that the other flower isn't related, and that the other flower is at least stage 2 or 3. And then we add stuff to the other flower's genome. So... Ah, shit, I think you saw my name. Go to self, edit that. Oh, I'm so bad at this. Anyway, so let's say our red gene was just 4 instances of 100. And our pollen that hit it was red 0. So now our new red genome for the flower that the pollen just hit is going to be this. Okay? When it comes time to make new flowers, it's going to shuffle this list and pick the first thing. So if it picks 100, it will then average that 100 with its value of 100 divided by 2. Right? And that will happen 4 out of 5 times. So 80%. 20% of the time, 20% of the time the child will have a red value of 50 instead of 100. So obviously that's just from getting hit by one pollen. The more pollen it gets hit by, the more possibilities for a genetic difference in the child will be. So yeah. So this roughly means that 80% of the children will be the same as the parent, 20% will be slightly less red, which probably means that they'll be browner. Browner? Or is it green? Green and blue. Yeah, so it'll be more teal, I guess. I forget how my color wheel works sometimes. So let's reiterate. Flowers grow. They spray off pollen. This pollen adds things to flowers' genomes. Then when a flower dies, it picks random stuff out of their genome and uses that to make a new flower. And this can get weird really fast. So right here, this is my tweak to counteract drabness. So if something is bright, it gets brighter. If something is dark, it gets darker. We're just going to increase the chance of it getting redder and decrease the chance of it getting bluer. So we're just going to slightly increase the amount of red that's going to be randomly added to the world. And let's run this for a few generations and see what happens. And I apologize if this explanation is very long and incoherent. I tried to cover a lot here, and a mix between technical and not technical. Again, there's definitely a lot of features I want to add. I want to make things more easily parameterized. Turnip and I just watched this for like an hour while we were waiting for food the other day. It's very soothing, even with the fireworksiness of it. What I really also want to add is bees, so that they have to be pollinated using bees and not just using exploding pollen, because everyone loves bees. Let's just let this go for a little bit and see if we do end up seeing an overall trend towards redness or not. I kind of want to get some free chill music or ask Turnip to play the kalimba and release some just like kind of like relaxing screensaver videos, just like an hour long of maybe like 20 minutes long of just this running for like however many generations is in 20 minutes with something relaxing in the background. Okay, so far I'm definitely seeing a bit of a trend towards yellows, and not that much blues presence. But again, these things, it's a very slight random tweak, and I may kill the experiment before we see any results. But I have made very slight tweaks like that before and seen surprisingly quick results. So we're expecting to see more reds, more oranges, more purples, and a pretty high amount of yellows too, I think. But we are distinctly seeing a lack of blues. Relative to purples, which I think is a pretty strong indicator that things that wouldn't possibly be blue are trending towards red. Again, I can't say definitively without us running a lot more experiments and a lot more thoroughly, but just qualitatively, I'm seeing blues tend towards purples after generations, and maybe I'm just trying to see a pattern that's not there. That's the That's the problem with trying to do science, but I think even after this fairly short number of generations, true blues and true greens look almost exterminated in favor of yellows and purples. You know, we have some holdouts in the corner there, but it's looking decidedly towards the purples. And if y'all don't mind humoring me for a second, let's see if we reverse that. Let's do a slightly drastic reversal. Let's see if we can get an increase in blues. And again, we're only going to run it for a couple of generations. But yeah, so plant your own flowers is one upgrade. I want to be able to globally parameterize it. I want to add bees, because fuck yeah, bees. Alright, so this is not going to be... I'm actually going to restart that. That looked like it had a higher than normal percentage of blues to start with. Okay, this one looks like it has a decent number of starting reds. But yeah. I released a video a while back of the kind of randomized tree generator that I made, which was a clusterfuck, but it actually had a decent UI. I just make so many little widgets. Again, I don't have like the focus for full games usually, but I really like just making neat little things like this. And I hope y'all think it's at least vaguely interesting. I know I can be a little long-winded, but I guess I could write scripts and stuff, but well, fuck that. I ain't got time. I ain't got focus for that shit. But again, hard to tell whether we're seeing like quantitatively significant results, but just eyeballing this, I am seeing a lot of blue. I'm seeing not a lot of red. Seeing a decent amount of green, but like we have like a little bit of pure red, but quite a bit of almost pure blue. And this is what, 2 generations? That just goes to show, like, I made a relatively small tweak. I think it's something like blue factor will increase by something like an average of going from an average of 10 per generation to 15 per generation. But yeah, no. That, I think, is a pretty clear result. But I want to change that back before it confuses the shit out of me later. Oh, I also dropped red and increased blue instead of just increasing one, so that could be that too. Anyway, enough babbling. Hope this was vaguely interesting. Hope you enjoyed. And until next time, double bite out.